Soundbite, an audio collection of bite-sized readings published by the Anti-Languorous Project, Volume 4, Winter 2020.
Past, trailhead, past, concrete, past, palms, past, hands outstretched, past, fork in the road, past, greens, past, blues, past, scent of, past, hot jasmine air, past the bend, past rounded corners, arc of a bridge, past approaching, overpass, black clouds becoming past, black trailhead sky, past becoming concrete, black rain past, becoming palms, black past, hammock, hands outstretched, black ink past, thick fork in black road, winds, winds, black past down, arms, legs past of black scent of past heat, hot lightning, jasmine wheels spinning, past what I thought was shelter, I didn't seek, but I found bridge, past the knife, wet over dirt, the knife, black mulch, clouds, the knife, stained black, sky, the knife, becoming under black overpass, rain, the knife, violent storm, black, the knife, water, black, mud, winds rushing in, a river runs backwards, arms, legs, I sleep of the black hammock, a circle in a black sky, lightning, rocking black and forth and black, I above was shelter, riverbeds, I didn't seek, but past I found the innocence, past the night, wet past dirt, the lost, the knife, black past mulch, my life through the night, past black frames, the night, want, regret, under black overpass, past beauty, the night, through danger, violent, past storm, danger, black beauty, past the night, agony, water, anger, black, mud, past anger, rushing in, the broken path runs that leads into the black. I sleep a black hammock, a circle in a black sky. I should have rocking black and forth and black above black. The river is on my hands. Past the innocence, past the paradise, past the lost, past my life before me, past still frames of want, regret, past beauty through danger, past danger through beauty, past agony through anger, past anger enraged, the broken path that leads into the black hammock, past, I should have passed right by it, the black is on my hands now.
What, this? My diamond necklace? What do you mean you've never seen it before? Not that I can blame you, to be sure. I'd be suspicious if you did notice anything dangling from your grandma's decolletage. But that's where it's always been hanging, since before your mother was an apple in her daddy's eye. 5 50-carat diamonds in a row, Asher cut, worth a pretty penny, or so a pawnbroker once told me. Oh, there have been times, I can tell you, when the purse strings were strung so tight, I've considered selling it. I stood in the store, but then I walked out the door. I couldn't face seeing it through the window, or wound round the neck of someone on the street. Don't worry, I won't pressure you to wear it one day. It's priceless to me, but just sentimentally. When I'm dead, you can take it to the Antique Roadshow. I won't be around to disown you about it. What's the use of diamonds to the dead? But I suppose if you are going to be putting it up for auction, you might want to know a little bit of its history. It was before Grandpa. You think he would fork up for this kind of finery? You'd have to be kidding me. It comes from when I lived in America. In the 50s, it was the thing for the Irish to do. Move to New York, earn some dollars, come home and build a life. Australia seems more and more the place to be. Every last one of my generation still kicking has at least one grandchild there. Anyway, it's from those days. I know it must be hard for you to imagine that your grandmother wasn't always a grandmother, but once I was young, scared and confused, and feeling adventurous in the city, full of wild ambitions and living in a little pad in the Bronx, taking the subway every morning to my job as a receptionist in the Fitzpatrick Hotel. But at night I was quite the dancer. Oh, I had quite the repertoire back then. The stroll, the hand jive, the cha-cha, the jitterbug, the bunny hop, the boogie-woogie, that was risque. Not what they're up to nowadays. And one night I was at Julius's in the village, having a fabulous time drinking rum runners, when I began talking to the most beautiful girl I'd ever met. Inez Horovitch, the ginchiest girl about town. What a doll she was. Curly hair, cut just like Liz Taylor, but gameen and sweet as anything. Always dressed to the nines. She was a seamstress. She was from a very well-to-do family, all stockbrokers and bankers, lawyers, doctors, important types. She had all the right education too, but she chose to be a dressmaker. She studied fashion magazines and worshipped at the throne of Coco Chanel. Everywhere she went, she would have something to say about the clothing. Her dream was a fashion line, and my God, she would have been good at it. Well, anyway, Inez took a liking to me. I think at first I must have been a hoot for her. As sheltered as could be, little old me, from a tiny town in Ireland all the way across the sea, suddenly exposed to this parallel universe she resided in. She was a little jaded by New York, while I was fascinated with it. And I was quite the charmer too, you'd best believe. I was the outgoing, chatty one, and she wanted to see an Irish girl drink, so I drank her under the table. I know I'm a teetotaler these days. Sure, your grandfather is convinced I've been a pioneer. But that was another era. A different epoch. Pregnant ladies were still drinking Guinness and thinking it was good iron back in them days. Do as I say, not as I do. I was miles from home, and Inez didn't remind me of anything back at home. She was a world apart. But she helped me make a life out there instead of trying to hold on to the one I came from. So we would drink at Julius's, wander the parks, go to the movies, stay with one another. We would meet up in cafes and kvetch about work. That was a Yiddish word she used. Kvetching. It's like complaining, but it sounds so much more stylish. I was naive. I only grew up knowing Irish Catholic traditions. But soon I was lighting candles on the menorah for my first Hanukkah and attending her little brother's bar mitzvah and cooking matzo ball soup for Passover. I would give out, "Oi, gewalt!" Meanwhile, I was teaching her the rosary wasn't just a string of beads. and that I prayed to St. Anthony for lost things, and the Child of Prague for good weather. She was humming Clancy Brothers tunes and cooking stew in the winter. She would say, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, especially when she was kvetching. When my lease ran out, she offered me boarding in her parents' apartment, a gorgeous brownstone on the Upper East Side. Every evening they seemed to have some soiree or society meeting or a temple event to go off to. I don't know what exactly Mr. and Mrs. Horowitz thought of my company, but I think they took pity in that I was their good charity as a poor Irish immigrant. As for their daughter, there were always shouting matches and slams of doors. They disapproved of her career decisions. She disapproved of any matchmaking attempts on their behalf. They wanted her to settle down and marry. Someone of their status. Someone ideally not Gentile, but definitely a man. Inez couldn't settle down. She was at the height of her youth. Her career prospects were just beginning. And she was in love with me. And I felt about her the way I feel for your grandfather. It's as simple as that. It was another time, a different place. I didn't have the language to express it. Perhaps that seems rather innocent, that there wasn't a word I knew to identify with or express how I felt, much less to understand it. All I knew was that I was in love, and that I would never be with my beloved. It was the way it was to be. We loved one another in the shadows, behind closed doors, in almost silence. And we would joke, we would imagine. Wouldn't it be funny if we moved downtown into a one-bedroom apartment together? We could raise some cats and a whole lot of hell. We could throw parties, and nobody would need to know. We would just be those funny ladies who lived together. For years I felt ashamed and embarrassed at the mere thought of Inez. That's what we did. It was scandalous and filthy and depraved. I tried to repent my sins, but I never admitted them to any priest for fear of being excommunicated. I chalked it down to experimenting. But then after everything that's happened with the church and God, everything that's happened to the world, I stopped feeling sorry. I'm old. I don't have time for guilt and remorse anymore. But of both of us, I had it easy. My family lived thousands of miles away. They only knew Inez through my letters. I could edit how much of her I would share with them. Where we lived under the Horowitz's watchful eyes. Besides, I loved her, but I went on to love your grandfather. I could do that. Inez was different. She didn't love men, not naturally. She did marry. She became Mrs. Inez Stein. Dr. Stein was perfectly fine. I wonder about him sometimes. Before the wedding, she proposed to me in Central Park. We had been having a picnic. She took out a little Tiffany blue box from her pattern bag. It was a wedding ring. Very flashy. She didn't get down on one knee. We didn't want anyone to see. She just sat and told me very solemnly, I want you to have this. She said, diamonds are a girl's best friend, and when I'm Mrs. Stein, you'll lose your good old pal Inez Horowitz. So I had to get you a diamond at least half as glamorous and glittering as your old best friend. And she kissed her ring, and she kissed mine. She told me when she would wear her engagement ring, she would pretend it was from me, and that we were the ones who were wedded. What a gesture. Well, I was overwhelmed and I wept. I never slept for days afterwards. I would sit and admire it and sob. Then we had to go to the Stein wedding. The whole ceremony she seemed to be orchestrating to make sure I found someone husband-worthy. I think she wanted to keep me in New York, in her inner circle. And I went along with it. I tried. But I wasn't Jewish. Their religion runs through the woman's side of the family, and it wouldn't have worked for me. I was moping and mourning, and she seemed angry that I was being a wallflower or a gooseberry. Maybe she was afraid of rumours following me about our relationship. But wearing a diamond ring wasn't going to find me a husband. And yet I didn't want to let it gather dust in a box either. So with Inez's permission, I went to another jeweller's. It was grounded into a floating pendant to stay close to my heart, where it has been ever since. Inez and I kept in touch now and again. I began to court your grandfather when he moved to the city. We met in an Irish bar when he was a construction worker. He felt like home to me. And it was love. Inez could see it. She was busy rearing children by then. She had retired from dressmaking and was only sewing the little ones' clothing exclusively. Best dressed children in Manhattan, and that's saying something. I think at first she was sarcastic and snarky. Perhaps that had become her personality. When I decided to move home and marry your grandfather back here, she thought I should go to the loony bin. She believed anyone leaving the island of Manhattan should be committed. I think she thought I had a lot more potential. Well, I invited her to the wedding, mostly out of duty. I didn't expect her to fly over. She never came. We continued writing letters, but always stiffly. They never again sounded like kvetching. We couldn't do that over the phone. It always came across as cold. Eventually we dropped out of one another's lives. Time rolls on, and youth is gone. We both went on to have new families and live other lives in lands that don't lead back to one another. And we fell out of touch. I don't know what became of her, or if she's still around. Sometimes I want to find her. Other times I'm worried what would happen if I found out my answer. I remember when I read the word bisexual for the first time. It was when the AIDS epidemic was on the news. I remember I called up Inez on the landline and asked her if she had heard the word before. She told me she had. And I said I thought I might be one. And she seemed surprised. I think she denied believing that we had any other relationship than girlhood friendship. That holding hands or glancing at one another, that my diamond ring was just that. Perhaps. When I told your grandfather, he said rather sternly, "So long as you aren't cheating on me, what difference does it make?" And that, my dear, is the tragic and shocking history of your grandmother's diamond necklace. And it's nothing much to anyone else but me, I'm sure of that. But doesn't it look just marvellous?
Red Rider Clone by William T. Blackburn. You'll shoot your eye out. Lever action, spring-loaded and with saddle ring, Christmas gift against mother's wishes, delight of boyhood type A personality, beware all beer cans. Older brother and I went a-hunting along the back roads. Gathered there we did empty cans of steel and aluminum. On graying post of barbed wire fence we sat them, paced back 50 feet-ish, took aim and tried to outshoot each other. His a Crossman pump action, pellet or BB bolt action. The f of each shot still lingers in memory. His BBs sped off in a puff of air faster than we could see. Mine arced like Sleepy Bee across the yard. Thus riddled and forlorn, we crushed those can remains. Black plastic bags, car-loaded, we sold that scrap metal, bought candy and pop and Class C fireworks. Generally tried to stay out of trouble. Silly boys. Sly grin and wink, nod to TV westerns. You'll shoot your eye out. Took that toy rifle to the family farm, nifty targets abounding. In the barn, plinking shots at wood knots, bale twine fraying as BBs whipped through. Sure as shit, I shot the salt lick. Saw the copper-toned BB streak from the barrel, bounce back ricochet rapidly advancing to my face. Glasses by grace, saving my sight. You'll shoot your eye out. Adjusting to that slow-mo BB, bets I won. Wagers of sniff my sneakers, answered with verve. Where brother shot from longer range, I shot walnuts from the tree. Other boys with their air guns up our street, together shaking pop cans, then admiring the explosion when the BBs rammed home from atop the ham radio tower. Trick shots from dipstick kids, all the rage. That moment came. That bravado. Thoughtless dare. Shoot the bird out in those trees beyond our fence line, as if safe we were from the deed. Standing on the driveway we fired, senseless. The creature died from several rounds. Paper targets preferred since that day. The bird was yellow-plumed. Its image burned. A sight in my mind's eye. You'll shoot your eye out. Boundless by William T. Blackburn. Boundless, doubtless, less trouble, best avoided careening, Pacific Coast highway dreaming, cutting-edge rockside drop-off, package on the front porch, advertisement for lazy thieves. Stopping by like unwanted guests, unannounced, a cup of sugar borrowed, stirred into tea reducing acidic tart to next to nothing. Next door fidgeting dog Haru, as I step from the car, cross boardwalks of blacktop and tree leavings, a tapestry of seasons, needlepoint of time and reckoning, overhead jet streams carrying pigeon-toed passengers, somewhere out of sight, out of mind. Don't mind if I do. If youthful vigor reinvented waxing, doubtless, boundless.
Lilacs. Polaroid memories of sunshine and frilly dresses scratching against my toddler knees as I wobbled my way to colorful eggs near church rectory windows, milk chocolate oozy warm in my little palm in chokehold grip on the unfortunate candy rabbit. Paper grass trailing from its backside, the taste of anticipation sharp against the backdrop of your purplish saccharine scent. I grew up here, where the avocado green station wagon's tires cut through dirt, kicking up a cloud that settled on the hood and sprayed behind us as my 16-year-old fingers curled tightly at the top of the hot metal wheel, and my father's voice soothed my nerves, and we found the next available pavement and turned around and headed home triumphant and dusty. Grim hope. Maybe it's only the house settling and not squirrels in the attic or a soul haunting. Maybe it's only turbulence and not a storm or a bird in the engine. Maybe it's only a backyard barbecue and not a burning meal or a home in flames. Maybe it's only a loose eyelash and not cherry blossom pollen or my heart breaking. Maybe it's only a temporary setback and not an omen or the end.
This is Black Rain. Though there's no way to confirm, they say this storm began on the other side of the world, perhaps in Fukushima or Israel, spread rapidly, wrapping everything everywhere in this darkness. A squirrel has died above the ceiling tiles in the hallway outside my office. There are hundreds everywhere, huge black flies. For so long the storm has not abated. I've lost track of the days spent under these black clouds of ash and the heavy rain they bring with them. The streets have become rivers, only the most courageous and the foolish venture out. From the window in my office I see the bodies in the streets whenever the fire rains from the sky. They say it's a sign from some god predicted by ancient prophets, punishment for all the evils of mankind. Others say it's our own fault, abusing the natural order with our science. It all sounds the same to me. All I know is, for more days than I can calculate, I've not left this campus, crawling like a rat through the tunnels to other buildings, then back to my office with what food and supplies I can scrounge. There are others too, students and professors and university staff wandering the tunnels. I do my best to avoid them. In their eyes, there's a desperation I believe will become dangerous. Best to play it safe.
The Five-Clawed Dragon, a poem written and performed by Melinda Jane, the poet MJ. A march of 1 billion feet woke the dragon of the east. Not since the time of Tang had dragon struck the paradigm. A time of prosperity broke, save the earth and pacify the people. So Emperor Tang released the creeple. Emperor wore his golden cloak, but the steel sword did the pacifying of the clans through continual warring. The creeple's nostrils respired smoke. The Yangtze River, where it came crawling, its tail end spiked with talons, lay sprawling. The Five-Clawed Dragon is evoked. Its awakening will coincide with war, Tang's dynasty to Mao's dinosaur. A march of 1 billion feet rouse reptile into a state of awakening. The place, 9 dragons, started pulsating. The South China Sea dragon soothes, and then started building up its great lair, rock by rock, on the islands to ensnare. The Song Hong Fault, the dragon plows, with its tail and claws, hunting for oil dregs. The dragon pulsated under the Reds. So Chinese dynasty flares. Mao wakes the Five-Clawed Dragon to claim terrain. Its lair is building up its wealthy vein. But this building up did arouse the other creatures upon earth and sky, like Great Bear, Hawk, towards the dragon's eye. The Great Bear of the North cried war, declaring right of passage through the strait, while Reptile used its tail to block stalemate. So joined Bear, the brindled black boar, coming out of the muddy delta plains towards the South Sea to clash, seize their claims. They fought the greater carnivore. His fire blinded boar, whose tusk gashed his side. Great Bear tore his throat, sulphur putrefied. Dragon flung Great Bear from the shore into the sea, swiped with his tail talons. Boar refuged in the delta from dragon. This was a time they called post-war, where Bear died and boar, blind, ebbed in the mud. Hawk saw Five-Clawed Dragon licking its blood. 5 little birds, pester, dragon from his great South Sea China lair. 5 little birds mount a flight with airfare. Wandering, whistling duck gestures rudely to the creeple, so dragon flew skyward, fireballs of sulphur letting spew. Duck's bravery was the tester. Little egret, purple heron, dropped rocks on creeple, whose body took blows and knocks. Black-faced spoonbill flew its nester, flying westward, joined the battle, spearing its beak in reptile, made a great tearing. The wound of the dragon festered. Hawk saw it all and decided to act. Hawk and little birds talked, then made a pact. Other nations' territories had been impinged, sailing right restricted, and 1/3 of global trade affected. Many years of hostilities broke out over trade routes of the South Sea. Reptile was causing ripples undersea. On the currents from the westerly, Hawk soars towards the dragon's South Sea lair. Dragon heard Hawk's cries and took to the air. Over Ganges' tributaries they met and clashed in combat of the air. Ram, claws, sulphur, they fell to earth somewhere. Hawk, dragon sought sanctuaries to heal from their wounds and prepare for war. Uluru, Hawk refuge, this was pre-war. Sleepy lizard woman soothed Hawk. The message sticks were written and sent out. 5 little birds flew great miles to a route. So Sleepy lizard woman talked under Uluru's shadowy night light, telling of Uluru's curse to smite. So dragon needed to be brought down, a formation of attack set. They started weaving a great fishing net. Birds gathered rocks for weapon stock. In the great fishing net the rocks were piled. The rocks would burn dragon and creates rile. Held in the great claws of Nighthawk, part of Uluru was clasped, gifted by lizard to quell dragon's fire and war cry. Cinnamon Bitten took the lead of the 5 little birds Air Force Squadron, flying towards dragon's lair in quadron. Birds clasped the net with all air speed, released Uluru's rocks and burnt the skin of dragon, then used the net, wrapped him in. Boar did a great heroic deed. He heard war, blind, he swam miles on the tide, with his tusks sheared dragon's tail off, then died. Reptile, tangled in the net, bled, one terrified scream, and Hawk dropped the rock into the mouth of fire, caused atomic clock. Plunging deep, deep to the seabed, through the tectonic plate of Songhong Fault, buried with bear and boar, a lava vault. The 5-clawed dragon, a fable.